Project Management for the Masses podcast, episode 43. The Human Side of Business and Ways We Make Stuff Up with Jonathan Crean.
Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business. Write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Caesar Abaid.
Learn from the experts. Think outside the box. Have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Caesar Abaid, your host, and this show is your weekly reminder that your career matters more than your job and that your life is a project and you are the manager. Whether you work for a company or for yourself, your job stability is really just your ability to land your next gig. So, join me in practicing intentional, planned, and value-adding relevance, starting right now. Well, let me start today's show by saying happy anniversary. Why? Well, this episode marks 1 year since the launch of the show, which happened on July 6th, 2013. And that's amazing. It's just been a year. It feels like it's a lot longer than that, but based on all the people that I met, you know. And the truth is that without you subscribing to this show and downloading it and listening to it, there'd be no show. It'd just be me here talking into a microphone and into the void. So happy anniversary to you as well. And thanks for listening and subscribing. And I really look forward to continuing to connect with you and to bring value to you and to the project management landscape. So yes, exciting times. Now, speaking of connecting with people, today's show is about that. It's about the human side of business, and more specifically, different ways that we make stuff up that really hinder our ability to communicate and connect on a human level. And to talk about this, I bring on my new friend, Jonathan Crean, right here from London, Ontario, Canada. So let me tell you a little bit about Jonathan. Jonathan Crean is a specialist in working with situations that can only be solved when the usual approaches have run their course. His goal is to help his clients discover unpredictable answers to their unanswerable questions. Very well put. And these questions can exist in the minds of leaders during times of change and challenge, or can persist for years on end and typically have to do with the human side of business. To accomplish this, Jonathan has taken his considerable experience working with many thousands of people and hundreds of leadership teams and created a process that he calls the human side of business. The sole purpose is to teach people to literally think differently, thereby creating solutions that generate real improvement. Jonathan is the author of several books, including Thinking Differently, About Implementing Ideas, and Duckster's Leap. His books are published across the globe in several languages. Now, for today's interview, I met Jonathan in person at a local coffee shop here in London. So, enjoy this interview and all the ambient sounds that only a bubbly coffee shop can provide.
Special guest coming up next. PMforthemasses.com. PMforthemasses.com.
Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Good, Cesar. Very good. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, thanks for meeting me here in person, and I think it's very interesting that we are meeting in person so we can talk about the human side of business. So you can look into my eyes and I can look into your eyes as we have this conversation. So thank you for making the time.
Well, the human side of business is all about that connection, isn't it? I mean, it isn't just the surface first impressions. It's about connecting at a deeper level to move people forward and help them become the best that they can be.
Right. And I'm excited to talk about that because a lot of people come to my podcast and to the website because they're looking around the web for soft skills and for how to connect with people. And I've mentioned this on the show several times before that a lot of project managers, they start in a technical position and they get promoted to a project manager, and now they went into engineering or computer science because they liked dealing with computers and numbers,
and then they get promoted to a position where they have to connect with the other human beings, and so it's a challenge for a lot of us. So I appreciate you taking the time. This is one of your expertises. You've written a number of books on topics related to this, so I appreciate you taking the time. So Jonathan, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do right now.
So I have dedicated my life to answering a simple question I asked when I was a teenager, which was, is there a better way for people to interact with each other in the workplace? I had a summer job painting pipes, and I would be listening to the managers, and I'd listening to how people interacted with one another, and I thought, wow, we spend 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day working with people outside of the home. There has to be a better way for people to work together so that they can actually, have fun, feel good, and achieve a goal. And so I've spent all of my life answering that question and have come up with tools and solutions that I think get to the root of that answer, which is how we think. So how the mind operates and why we think certain ways that we do think, and are those thoughts useful or not to us? How we perceive what's going on around us, because it's our perception that dictates our behavior. How we behave, how we interact, and finally, that core piece, which is the nature of human nature itself. What is it about being a human, and what is its nature that either helps or hinders how we interact?
That is. It sounds very high level. It's a little bit abstract. So what we're going to try to do here today is kind of bring it down so we can actually talk about some actionable items that we can do to kind of be better at this. And we're going to talk about the 6 ways that we make stuff up, which is a great thing that you shared with me. But before we get there, let's talk about the human side. You kind of gave us a little bit of an explanation already. But what is the human side of business, and why is it important?
So everything in business is about the human side, right? Even the project management side, although can be data driven, it's still about translating of ideas through people to achieve the end result that the project is intended. So your ability to understand how people think becomes extremely important. What motivates them, what turns them on, why are they interested in helping you achieve this project? That's all the human side. It's all what we call the soft side, I suppose. But without the soft side, there is no hard side, right? So, we can interpret the data, and that data might get accumulated, but it's how the data gets interpreted. That's the soft side. And if it's not interpreted accurately, then poor decisions are made.
Right. That makes sense. And this is, I think, the challenge here for a lot of us who have the technical background is math. There's always the right answer, right? And different ways to get to that answer, but there is the right answer. While with the human side, it's more flexible and it's more fluid, because the person you're talking to, it's never the same as the next person. So how do you connect to that person? It becomes a challenge for a lot of people. So, one of the things that we met before, and we kind of went over a couple of these topics before in personal conversations, private conversations. But you shared with me a little card that says the 6 ways that we make stuff up, and the right word is not stuff. It's you can imagine it's another S word, but because the podcast is it's family rated, you can fill in the blank there. But what is the problem with the 6 ways that we make stuff up? And let's talk about some of them. But what is it? What is it that this does that kind of puts us that blocks us to connecting on a human level?
Right. So first of all, we should talk about what is making stuff up.
Right.
And how does that impact on how people interact? So making stuff up is not about lying. Mm-hmm. It's about how we translate the information in our minds and then talk about it. So in the classic definition of making stuff up, you're in a bar with your buddy and you're sharing a story about the fish that got away that was this big, and then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. It's the classic fish story. That's one way that we make stuff up. So it's the embellishment. It's the creation of a story that may or may not be fully accurate.
Okay.
On another level, making stuff up is about the excuses that you give if you haven't gotten something finished. So you're supposed to get a certain aspect of the project finished. It wasn't done. You share an excuse. You're making stuff up. Right? So when you cut all that stuff out and you stop making excuses about why you didn't get something done, it's very clean, it's very straight, and nobody has to read into why something didn't occur. You didn't get it done. You say it's not done, and that's the end of the story. Then you can move on. But if you're stuck in the making stuff up all the time, then the project doesn't move ahead. And you see that in meetings when people go around in circles.
Yeah.
Right? There's, you'll start with one aspect of a meeting, and it never goes beyond that aspect. That's when people start making stuff up. And if we can cut all that out, then communication is very clear, very direct, and very concise, and you can get to root cause a lot faster.
That's very interesting because we talk about project management being 90% communication. 90% of what we do is nothing technical, not getting things done, not anything but communication. So if you can clear the air from these things, so how do you you come into an organization and you work with a team to kind of, because I can see how this can work if both the transmitter and the receiver of the communication are on the same page about the making stuff up. But I could be on the transmitting side without making any stuff up, and that can sound very blunt and direct to a recipient who's not used to all the flourishings that usually goes along with communication. So how do you approach in an organization that is used to making stuff up? How do you approach this elimination with them?
So what we would do is actually go into that organization and do a workshop on how to stop making stuff up. And we call it the 6 ways we make stuff up.
Okay.
And what to do about it. Right? So that's about a day-long program, and the critical thing is to understand that when you make stuff up, you're not necessarily lying.
Okay.
Because people take it very personally. Well, I'm not lying. Well, no, it's not about lying. It's about how you're communicating what you're supposed to be communicating without the flourishment, without the story, without the drama, without the emotion, without the taking it personally, which you don't need to do most of the time.
Okay, so I'm going to read here the 6 ways that we make stuff up, and then maybe we can just choose a couple of them to go into more detail and expand on them. So number 1 is excuses. Oh, that kind of explains itself a little bit. Number 2 is storytelling. I guess that's we can talk about that. Number 3, opinions, judgments, and quick answers. Number 4 is self-pity. Number 5 is mind reading. That sounds intriguing. Number 6 is untruths, half-truths, and little white lies. And I'm going to put this up along with the show notes for this episode, so the listener can go to pmforthemasses.com and look at this card and see number 1 through 6. But where should we start here? Which one of them?
Well, people always enjoy the mind reading, which is number 5.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Because mind reading is that sense of understanding that you know what someone is going to do or say before they say it. So it typically shows up in terms of, if you're telling me something and I finish your sentence for you. That's mind reading, right? And I was in a store once looking at some clothes, and the salesperson literally finished my sentences for me and got it wrong each time. And so he thought that he knew what I was thinking, but in reality he knew nothing about what I was thinking because he wasn't listening deeply enough to get what I was truly looking for. He thought I was looking for dress pants when I was looking for khakis. Well, that's mind reading, right? It's just that sense of, I think I know what you're thinking, so I'll make my assumptions based on what I think you said rather than what it is that you actually said.
So how do you deal with it? A lot of times when people are telling you something, they are making stuff up.
Oh, they are.
So you kind of need to kind of make your own, come up with your own conclusions, do a little bit of mind reading to get to the point. So how do you balance that without actually making stuff up that is not right?
Well, you let them finish their thoughts.
Right.
And you listen very deeply to what it is that they're saying, to the point where if you're not clear, you ask them a question, or you get feedback, or you feedback what you think you heard them say to make sure that that's exactly what you did say here, right? So communication's a feedback loop, right? You say something, I say something back, you respond back, I react back, and so on around. So the only way you can stop mind reading is stop assuming that you know what the person says.
That's hard to do because we have our own little narrative in our minds of how the world is going, or our little story that we are constantly feeding into. And people in our lives are little characters, right? In our little narrative. So, a lot of times what somebody will say kind of surprises me. Like, oh, I didn't expect to hear that from that person. So to me, that's a sign that maybe I'm mind reading. I'm making assumptions about how they're seeing the world, and I'm missing the point, the mark.
You're missing the mark if they surprise you because you're not completely focused. Your full attention isn't focused on that person. That I like the use of your word narrative. That ongoing dialogue that you have about what you're hearing or what you're seeing. That actually acts as a screen between you and that other person. And when you let that narrative go, when you stop the narrative, then you're more open, and you don't have any time for making stuff up because there's nothing to make up. You're connecting with that other person that we talked earlier about.
All right. So what is the let's say the project manager or the person who work within a team who's listening right now, and they want to avoid mind reading. What is your advice?
My advice is to slow down your thoughts enough so that you're not dictating what your next step is going to be. So it becomes very important to become aware of what you're thinking and become aware of how that person is influencing you at that moment. So all the judgment and all that stuff, you really need to just stay quiet about it, to the point where you might have to actually discipline yourself. When you hear yourself going off, you just bring yourself back into that present moment with that person, and the mind stops making stuff up.
Okay, and ask questions. I guess it's a good approach as well. If you're not clear what's being said, just ask.
Absolutely ask, or feedback what you think you heard. So did I hear you say this, or so this is your reason? And very often that gives people a chance to think about what they actually said, and do they actually believe what it is that they said.
Mm-hmm. And I can also see other byproducts of this approach. I mean, it improves communication. It shows that you're willing to listen, and it makes you more likable as well. Because, this person is really listening to what I'm saying, or really trying to understand what I'm saying. So besides actually learning what it is that's being said, you create a good impression, I guess, and facilitate communication with that person. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, it can be very powerful because you're meeting them at the human level first.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody's motivated to be listened to. Everybody wants to be heard.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody wants their ideas to be valid and validated. We want to look good, sound smart, be right, feel safe, and be secure. Those are the motivators of human nature.
Mm-hmm. So what are those again? That's good.
They are look good or not look bad.
Yeah.
Sound smart or not sound stupid. Be right or not be wrong. Be safe, as in physically safe, and feel secure, i.e. emotionally and psychologically secure with who we are and our place in the world and what our goals are, right? So if those aren't being met, you will hear people make stuff up because they feel that that's what they need to do to have them met. So as a project manager, if someone keeps coming to you with exactly the same problem each time, and you get frustrated by that, they're telling you something very, very important that you have not heard them. Because if you had heard them, they wouldn't come anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Something is not being addressed that needs to be addressed by that person.
That is a great insight. Actually, I'm gonna make sure that that's in the show notes for the episode as well. Was to realize that everybody's seeking those 5 things. 5, right?
Yeah, look good, sound smart, be right, be safe, feel secure.
Then that can help you, direct the conversation so you can actually reach each one of those 5 points with the person you're talking to or the person you're trying to help.
Well, what typically happens in a project management situation, and I've done a lot of change work. I've implemented cultures within organizations. We've implemented world-class manufacturing cells. If those 5 things aren't addressed, people won't buy in at the level that you need to have them buy in at, because it doesn't make sense to them, right? As soon as what you ask someone to do makes sense to them and they can see what's in it for them, they're more likely to buy in at the level you need to have them bought in at. So if it doesn't make sense, it means that something is missing in the information that they're seeing that doesn't allow them to keep their world together. So if I'm asking you to drive over to the store, but you're doing other things at that moment, that doesn't make sense to you to go over to the store because you've got other things on your mind, right? As soon as I give you the answer, as soon as I address why it's important to go to the store and what's going to happen if you do and how that impacts on our relationship and your ability to get your job done faster or effectively, that is, I tap into what's in it for you, then your chances of going to the store for me have increased significantly. But if I just ask you to do something, well, why would you do it?
Okay, so would you recommend that if you're trying to convey an idea or try to get buy-in, to kind of spin it or present it so it addresses each one of those 5 needs or desires, so you're hitting the mark?
Well, yes. So you want to give them why. What does the future look like? So this is what's going to happen as a result of us being together. What are the steps that we need to follow? What's the next step? And what are the objectives that we want to hit? If those 5 questions aren't answered, then people don't buy in at the level you need to have them bought into. And the biggest question that's typically missed is why. And so people can make stuff up.
Okay.
And they do make stuff up. Well, I can't do it now because... So the worst thing that happens is that they nod agreement, but they don't follow through. The nodding of agreement is making stuff up. Because they have, sure, yep. But there's no follow through. there's no completion, that means they're totally making stuff up.
Right.
They don't intend it to be negative. They're not looking at saying, well, screw you, I'm not going to do it. It's that it hasn't fit within the framework of their current life, right? So what they've really done is they've acknowledged that your lips have moved and sound has come out of your mouth, but they haven't truly understood what it is that you're looking for. And they're making stuff up.
And in their need to feel secure and safe, they just agree.
They just agree.
So you get off their back.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So they've acknowledged. So really, the head nodding is an acknowledgement that your lips moved and sound came out of your mouth. That's all it is. They actually haven't heard or understood what you've said.
Wow. That makes good sense. This is an awesome insight. Thank you for sharing. So let's talk about another one. Which one would you like to cover next? I think we're not going to have time to cover all 6 of them, but we talked about mind reading, and which one should we talk about next?
I think we can talk about opinions, judgments, and quick answers.
Sure.
That's always a fun one. In meetings, you will hear the opinions and the judgments come out, and you'll hear the quick answers come out. And it's typically from people who, A, don't like silence, so they want to fill up the silence with something, or they feel like they should be looking good, sounding smart, being right, even if they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So they will give answers, or they will give opinions or judgments that are not necessarily relevant or don't give a complete story or a complete understanding of what the issue is. So they're what's known as quick draw McGraws. They will quickly give an answer. Everybody knows it's BS except them. Nobody's really going to listen to them. They've lost respect of the group, and you'll get a lot of eye rolling as a result of that. So instead of feeling like you need to fill up the silence or give an answer because you want to look good, sound smart, be right, the important thing to do is to sit back and be quiet and truly hear what is being said, right? Project managers don't need to give opinions. What they need to give are as close to the information required as possible. Now, I know some of your listeners go, well, opinions are important because they can help create things. Sure, if it's a brainstorming session, go for it. But if it's going to slow down things, just keep your mouth shut because you're really not adding value to the overall situation, right? And you have to become aware of your motivation for wanting to talk. What is your motivation for feeling that you need to say something at that moment? Because it may or may not be helpful to the overall end result of the meeting.
Okay. So, would you say that knowing, let's say it's in a meeting, in the context of a meeting, knowing what the goals and objectives for that meeting is, what they are, knowing that first, and then deciding whether to open your mouth or not?
Well, this goes right back to why is the meeting being called? What are the objectives of the meeting? What's going to happen in the meeting? It goes back to those 5 questions, right? How many meetings have you gone into where the outcome of the meeting was not actually fully defined up front? Many. We feel like we should have a meeting, but in reality, do we actually need it? So does everybody know why they're having the meeting, and does everybody know what the purpose is, and is everybody clear on the outcome expected? That's the first thing, and most meetings are not that well thought through. And then you ask yourself, okay, so if this is the outcome of the goal of the meeting, and I have no emotional baggage attached to this meeting, I have no hidden agendas, I have no extra things I want to prove, then you're going to have a good meeting because everybody's there for one specific answer.
And you'll know when to speak up or when to just stay quiet. Yeah, I've been in situations that the conversation needs to go in a certain path, and then somebody says something that is not helpful. I mean, it's true. What they're saying is true and is valid, and they're correct, and they're not lying, right?
Right.
But it serves no purpose for that meeting. It just creates a parallel conversation that is not useful. And people just kind of tune them out. So yeah, I get it. Yeah, but really, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about this. So
what was their motivation for saying it? We can't make stuff about it because she's not here at the moment, right? But
probably they wanted to sound smart, or they wanted to,
could be. Right?
Yeah.
So when making stuff up is a very natural human thing to do. You can take a look at those 5, those 6 things of making stuff up: excuses, storytelling, opinions, self-pity, mind reading, untruths, half-truths, little white lies. And any one of us can take a look on that sheet and go, I do that. I was talking to a client yesterday who took those 6 things home with them, put it on the fridge, and he and his wife are comfortable with enough with each other that they actually will call each other on it, and they just have a lot of fun with it, right? Oh, you just made stuff up right there, didn't you? Yeah, I did. Right? And it's a fantastic tool of clean, honest communication. I was talking to a stand-up comic, and I showed him the 6 ways we make shit up, and he looked at the card and he goes, "That's marriage." So it's self-evident that we do it. The point is it helpful to us or not? Mm-hmm. Right? Does it move the project forward by making stuff up, or do we want it out of our communication?
Mm-hmm. I can see maybe somebody listening right now saying, well, sometimes depending on they're raw and crude facts that you can just like an Excel spreadsheet or a bar graph or some sort of a Gantt chart that is not made up. That's the
how
fact.
Do we know?
Well, let's just assume that that's the right fact. But how you present that, depending on what it is that you want to accomplish, could be construed or could be seen as making stuff up, like the spin you put on things.
The what?
The spin you put on things.
Right.
So what's the difference between using some facts that are true in order to achieve some sort of objective by creating a story around it? What's the difference between that and just making stuff up that is useless?
That's a great question, and I think it probably has to do with ultimately what are the signals that you're picking up from that person. Mm-hmm. And so what's the tone of voice that they're saying, or what does their face look like? And what are the nonverbal cues that you're picking up as that person is talking? Mm-hmm. You may not be able to.
Yeah. That's
the truth, right? I mean, if someone is bent on getting their agenda, set and reached, and is using facts to back up their agenda, they're going to do that.
Yeah. Very good. All right. So, Jonathan, what are some of the tools that you have on your website or anywhere that can help leaders tap into the human side of business and maybe avoid some of these traps of making stuff up?
So one of the books that I wrote is called Thinking Differently About Initiating Change, and it goes into the 5 questions that we talked about earlier in terms of why, what's going to happen as a result, and that type of thing. And that book helps address those five agendas of human nature: look good, sound smart, be right. And it gives a very simple 4-step process to implement your ideas at work or at home.
Okay.
That's one book that might be helpful.
All right, and what's the name of the book?
Called Thinking Differently About Initiating Change.
Okay. We'll have a link to that book in the show notes again for this episode. And Jonathan, if people want to learn more about you and what you do, where should they go?
They could go to jonathancreenan.com, JONATHANCREAGHAN.com, or they could check me out on LinkedIn as well.
And there is a self-assessment tool as well on your website that people can take. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we take a look at, are you coming at things from a reactive emotional perspective, or are you coming at it from a strategically responsive perspective? And there's five or seven questions there that will help you and your team recognize where they're coming from.
Okay, and the assessment is free to take?
Free to take.
All right.
So
So I will have all the links that we talked about here today at pmforthemasses.com under the post for today's episode. And Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. It's a great talking to you
It was
again.
fantastic. It was great fun. Thanks so much.
You are listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
All right, cool. So I hope you enjoyed my chat with Jonathan there. I had a great time meeting with him and having that conversation in person. And I really recommend you check out his website and take the assessment there. You can find the links to his website, to the assessment, and to a bunch of other things related to his content at pmforthemasses.com/43, which is the URL for today's episode. You can find the show notes as well, and a graphic that shows all the 6 ways that we make stuff up. Now, besides the awesome conversation that I had with him, one of the most valuable lessons I took from my interaction with Jonathan is the realization that you can really connect with incredible people right here, or not here, but in your hometown, wherever you live. So my tip for you today, besides checking the show notes and the links and Jonathan's material, is to network locally and meet people in person. You never know what can happen when you start meeting people and talking to them eye to eye. And I think we kind of learn to rely too much on social media and on the internet in general to connect with people. But I think we kind of forgot, how valuable it can be to actually meet in person. There's nothing like it, So one thing you can do is go to your PMI chapter. Usually they'll have some monthly get together, and whatever organization that you participate in, and just go there and meet people there, network there, but don't leave it at that. When you get a business card, follow up with that person and take that relationship out of the networking event. Invite someone for a cup of coffee. And in fact, before I met Jonathan for the interview, I met with him prior, a couple of weeks earlier, and we just had coffee and we talked about business. We talked about project management. We talked about life in general. Turns out that he's an avid RV person. He has a passion for traveling and for Airstream type of RV. So we talked a lot about that, and it's fascinating. People are really fascinating. Everybody has a story that can inspire you to go and do something. Everyone has intrinsic value and dignity, and by tapping into someone's world like that, you will find ways to be helpful and be helped, and that's when really things happen for you. What is a job but you helping someone, right? And them helping you. And every interaction that is positive in our lives, it has to do with this, being helpful and being helped. And there's no way for you to be helpful and be helped unless you know people on a deeper level. So go meet someone new, and that's my challenge for you today. Go there, meet someone new, ask about their life, be inquisitive. Just ask questions, let them talk. Be there, and then come back to the website and let me know how that went. All right, and you can leave a note right there on pmforthemasses.com/43, or you can send me an email through the contact me page on the website, and I can guarantee you that it's going to be valuable to you. So that's what I had for you today. I hope this was valuable and that you have enjoyed the podcast today and for the past year. So here's to another year of PM for the Masses, and I will talk to you next week. And until then, remember that life is a project, and you, my friend, are the manager. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
PMforthemasses.com